mercenary who does not die is third rate. The reason a mercenary gets paid so much is because they are expected to gladly die for their employer. Even when hearing that kind of employer nonsense every day, that is simply the life of a mercenary. MC is standing on the rooftop of a burning building, flames roaring around him. When he asks if all nobles are truly the same, when they need him, they talk grandly about granting land. But in the end, every single one of them goes back on their word as if it were planned from the start. He then chuckles, saying what he just heard tops them all. He must have misheard. A royal knight stands before him, and MC calls him commander. His commander replies that he did not mishear. He really did say he wants him to die. Jake asks if he forgot who he is, and the commander says he has not forgotten. He is Jake, captain of the Fang Mercenary Corps. Jake chuckles, saying the commander must be joking. Otherwise, there's no way he would order him to die fighting like some noble knight. The commander then admits he spoke too rashly. He apologizes, saying he only wanted to give him one last mission. As he knows, because of their repeated losses, the odds are heavily stacked against them. With nowhere left to retreat, his words slipped out in a rush. Jake asks if that's all, then he understands completely. He thinks to himself that it's about time to pull out of here. If even a man hailed as a once-in-a-generation talent in the Empire has been pushed this far, that says everything. For a noble, the commander was actually one of the reasonable ones. It is a shame it came to this, but in the midst of all this, a last mission. Is he planning to send them to scout and secure a retreat route or something? If it is just that, Jake can chalk it up as one last bit of trouble before they collect their final payment. But then his commander says the mission is simple. Tomorrow, the rebels will launch a full-scale attack. He wants them to hold the rebels off for a while until his lord escapes. If that's not possible, then at least die. He then takes out a gem, saying he will pay the remainder with this, but Jake smashes the gem from his hand. The commander demands to know what he is doing, but Jake fires back that he should be the one asking that. That order is basically asking them to be meat shields. Even if they join the battle, they will only hold out for a short time. And let us say they somehow manage to succeed, then what? Does he think the rebels will let them simply walk away? The commander insists that they are mercenaries, not knights. The enemy will not bother with them after he dies. Jake laughs, saying that to the rebels. Their mercenary corps is a hated enemy they have sworn to tear apart, no matter what. Jake asks if he knows how many commanders he has personally beheaded. Right now, those rebels are more fired up about tearing them apart than they are about chasing his lord. Jake then asks if the commander was really counting on that planning to draw all enemy attention to them. The commander says all he asks is that Jake carry out the mission. If he refuses, then the only option is to cut him down and seize command of the corps himself. Jake hops back, saying he thought the commander was different, but it turns out he is the worst kind of trash. The commander apologizes, but Jake says he could hand his head over to the rebels' camp right now and would not feel a shred of guilt. The commander asks if Jake intends to offer his head to the rebels and beg for his life. Jake agrees that he would love to throw the commander's head at them and run, but he has already made sure his own men cannot simply walk away. So in that case, he will do what he can. If the rebels get 2 commander-class heads, they will be satisfied, and they will probably let his men live. The commander asks if Jake plans to offer up his own head as well. Jake explains that he gathered every last one of his subordinates, because he wanted to show them they could reach their dreams from the very bottom. They trusted him and followed him this far, so he must take responsibility for them too. The commander smiles, saying that is what it truly means to lead others. How unfortunate. If Jake had been his lord, things might have been different. Just then, Jake appears before him in an instant, launching an attack. But before he can reach him, the commander tells him not to forgive him and then beheads him in a single strike. Jake thinks to himself that things turned out exactly as he feared, but he didn't expect the gap in power to be this immense. Damn this thing called talent. He smiles faintly, thinking he told his men to run if he did not return in an hour, so he can go without worry. He has always been ready to meet his end anyway. He was only curious about one thing. If he had been given the same chances as the nobles, how far could he have climbed? His vision gradually fades until suddenly he hears someone waking him. A boy tells him to wake up. Jake asks who he is. The boy raises his hand and slaps him hard, urging him to get a hold of himself and calling him young Master Lucian. Jake is stunned. Did he just get slapped across the face? Who hits someone out of nowhere like that? The boy keeps crying, begging him to wake up, and Jake can only stare, shocked by the name he just heard. Jake thinks to himself that something feels terribly wrong. He looks down at his hands, wondering where the scarred, torn-up hands he once had went, and why he now has clean, soft hands. the kind that clearly belonged to some sheltered young master. Whose dainty palm is this, and seriously? What is wrong with this kid? Just a moment ago, he slapped someone across the face, and now he is bawling his eyes out. Han says it is a relief as he thought Jake was really dead. His heart nearly stopped. Han adds that if he had truly died, he would have been punished right along with him, as his personal attendant. Not to mention, it would have been a massive tragedy for their entire house. And just what kind of nonsense has this brat been spouting since earlier? Personal attendant, young master, their house. Not a single one of those words has anything to do with Jake's life. More than that, he definitely died back then, so completely that no one could have saved him. How on earth is his head still attached to his neck? He looks around again, and after putting everything together, there's only one conclusion he can reach. He gets down from the bed, realizing he has ended up inside someone else's body, and not just any stranger, but one with a dangerously handsome face. He looks into the mirror and thinks that even at a glance, he is oozing noble aura. It is painfully obvious he is a noble, and judging by the surroundings, one from a family that practically smells like money. He turns to Han and says he has a few questions. Han agrees, and Jake asks what year it is now. Han answers that it is Imperial Year 846. Jake freezes in shock. 15 years before the day he died, he went back to the past. Grabbing his head, he thinks that whatever is happening, he needs to focus on what must be done first. Jake then asks Han if he woke up today deciding he wanted to die. Han is startled as Jake coldly points out that a lowly attendant dared to lay his hands on his master's body. Did the rules of this house change while he was unconscious? If not, then answer him. Who is he? Han trembles under Jake's sudden, overwhelming presence. He hurriedly begs for forgiveness, saying he lost his head earlier and acted terribly rude. He introduces himself properly. He's Han, personal attendant to Lucian Valdek, the third son of the great House Valdek. Jake's thoughts race. If he means that House Valdek, then this is no ordinary noble family. It is a house that has supported the Empire for generations. A prestigious lineage that serves directly at the Emperor's side, wielding power nearly on par with the imperial family itself. Jake knows this house well. 15 years from now, House Valdek would be the place where he worked for years as a guard, and now, after dying, he wakes up only to find himself as the third son of House Valdek. All his life, because of his damn low birth, he had to swallow every kind of filth the world threw at him. And now he has been given this kind of chance. If he had been granted the same opportunities as nobles from the start, just how far could he have climbed? He opens the window, breathing in deeply, thinking he will see just how far he can go and how he will live this life. Later, as Jake walks down the hallway with Han, he looks around in awe. He has seen countless places as a mercenary, but this is easily the most extravagant of them all. He will have to get used to this place as soon as possible. The servants stare at him, whispering among themselves, and Jake notices that the way they look at him is not normal. He asks Han about it. Han explains that ever since he shut himself in his room, he has not seen anyone but Han for 1 year and 2 months. Jake sighs, wondering what could have driven Lucian to hole himself up for that long. In this house, acting freely should not have been possible because standing at its center like an unshakable giant with iron principles and convictions is the man who protects the Empire, Archduke Sigmund. There is no way that man would simply sit back and watch his own son rot away in a room. Either Lucian was such a problematic child that the family gave up on him, or there is some special reason the Archduke chose to overlook it. As Jake is thinking this, the head butler, Edwin, appears. He says the report that Lucian has recovered was true. Seeing his face for the first time in a year, Edwin cannot hide his delight. Jake looks at him thinking, House Valdek has this man as well. Even though Edwin first entered the mansion as a hostage from a rival house in his youth, his outstanding abilities earned him the position of managing all household affairs. He is Archduke Sigmund's right-hand man. Jake knows there is no way a man like Edwin would fail to notice if he acted like a street rat from the slums. The only thing he can rely on now is putting on an act. He copies the most noble-like person he knows and thanks Edwin, saying that thanks to everyone's care, he has recovered quite a bit. He adds that he hopes there have been no problems in the family. Edwin looks puzzled for a moment, then smiles and replies that House Valdek is always in good health and prosperity, and it gladdens him to see that Lucian is as well. Jake says he will return with an easy mind, but Edwin stops him, asking him to delay his return for a moment because there's someone who wishes to see him. Jake is surprised. Soon after, he finds himself standing face-to-face with Archduke Sigmund himself. Sigmund looks directly at him and speaks in a heavy, commanding voice. He says he will ask him just one thing: how is he still alive? Sigmund, his anger barely restrained, tells Jake that he was willing to overlook it. He tolerated Jake using his mother's death as an excuse to neglect his duties and act spoiled. But in the end, he crossed the line, shutting himself away for over a year in open protest. Worse still, he came to treat his own life lightly and even tried to throw it away. Jake thinks to himself that this must be why Han was crying and screaming like that earlier. Han desperately told his father that there had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Sigmund coldly orders him, for the last time, to spit out what he has been hiding in that small heart of his. Then he asks whether this was not what he wanted from the start, to shove sleeping pills into his own father's mouth. Jake gets stunned. Now he understands why he's missing Lucian's memories. Lucian Valdek, the third son of the Grand Duke's family. Jake worked security here 15 years ago, and right around that time, that child was already dead. The Duke had 4 sons, each born to a different mother. During the 10 years Jake worked here, he met the young masters and their mothers countless times. Yet for Lucian and his mother, he never saw either of them even once. His mother died young from illness, and not long after Jake began working here, Lucian, for reasons unknown at the time, followed his mother to the grave. Back then, Jake simply assumed they were both weak and sickly, but that was not the real reason. With his mother's death and his fragile standing within the family, it must have been far too much for a child to bear. In the end, Lucian chose to swallow a dose of sleeping pills, hoping to gain the Archduke's attention. But after more than a year of isolating himself, his body had grown too weak. He could not withstand the drug, and he died. Jake lowers his gaze, thinking that when he first saw the Duke chewing him out after a year, he thought the man was overly harsh. Now, it feels disturbingly reasonable. The Duke is still a father confronting his son. There is no way this situation has not torn him apart inside. Just then, Jake tells himself not to sympathize. If he says even a single word that fails to satisfy the Duke, he will meet a cruel fate once again. He grits his teeth. This is a brand new life he barely managed to seize, even after having his head cut off. There is no way he will let some family drama destroy the precious road now laid before him. Jake bows deeply and apologizes for staining the Valdek name with his foolishness, and for causing the family great worry. He says this is entirely his fault, and he will accept whatever punishment his father sees fit. What has been done in the past can never be undone. Because of that, the life pulled back from the brink of death. In this second chance, he intends to change it and live sincerely for the future instead. As Jake speaks, Edwin is taken aback. He feels as though something has fundamentally changed within him. Is this truly the same Master Lucian who once shrank away from everything? Sigmund then says that he truly has lived long enough to see everything. Jake thinks to himself, it worked. His father asks what he plans to do from now on. Jake answers that first. He will fix this ruined body of his. After that, he plans to properly learn the sword. His father asks him how. Jake replies that this body will be difficult to deal with, but if he eats well and perseveres, he is confident he will manage somehow. His father says he talks well enough. Then he calls for Edwin, telling him to back it up for him. Fine words alone will not suffice. Edwin agrees and says he will see to it right away. Jake is left confused. A short while later, Jake stands before several chests. He opens them and freezes. They are filled to the brim with gold. So this is what it means to belong to a truly noble house. This is his pocket money. Just for 1 month. With this much money, it is doable. He can completely rebuild this weak body, and he will make every elixir he needs. Inside the garden, the Archduke walks alongside Edwin. Edwin watches the Duke closely, thinking that this is the place the Duke cherished most in his lifetime, yet he had stopped coming here for quite some time. For him to return now, it must be because of Master Lucian's change. As the child of the Archduchess he treasured so dearly, there is no way the Lord would let him go so easily. Just then, the Duke speaks, saying Lucian truly was pathetic, always darting his eyes around in fear. Edwin gets surprised as the Duke continues, saying he would whimper like a beaten dog the moment anyone raised their voice. His attitude was so unlike her that he believed the only thing Lucian inherited from his mother was her appearance. But today, for the first time, he has begun to think he might have been wrong. He asks Edwin if he saw it as well how Lucian looked him straight in the eye. Edwin agrees, saying he was calm and dignified. He has a gentle heart and is deeply considerate of others, far more so than the other young masters. He merely hesitated for a time. The Duke replies that this remains to be seen because what lies ahead of him are challenges that mere words will never be enough to overcome. Just then, Edwin informs him that there appears to be a problem. The financial support that had been cut off from Master Lucian has been resumed, but there are signs that part of the funds are leaking outside. After investigating, it seems the second young master, Geordie, is involved. He dismissed the head maid serving the third young master and replaced her with one of his own people in an attempt to keep him in check. The Duke says Geordie is capable, but his narrow-mindedness is his flaw. Given the trouble stemming from his mother's side, it is understandable. Edwin asks if he should take separate measures, but the Duke dismisses the idea. Edwin presses further, asking if this is not too harsh for someone who has just taken his first step. The Duke answers that this is the price the third is paying for wasting the last year. They will see how the boy handles it. If he cannot even deal with this, then there is no reason to expect anything from him. The blood of House Valdek may be the key, but the one who opens the door must always be the person themselves. A few days later, inside a castle room, Han stands guard. This is the third day since the funds that had once been cut off began flowing again. The young master said his talk with the Duke went well and that the support was resumed, but knowing how things were between them, it could not have been easy. He must have shown tremendous courage. On the other hand, Jake stares at the treasure before him, thinking that with this much, he can actually do it. Inside his room, he prepares the elixir. He knows Han must be bursting with questions, but seeing how he guards the door exactly as instructed, Jake realizes he is more loyal than he looks. He thinks how ironic it is. He's the Duke's son, yet he has probably never handled this kind of alchemy tool in his life. He spent his entire allowance on a single herb that only grows under moonlight, so rare and expensive that even its basic uses are not fully understood, moonlight grass. And yet, he knows that in just 1 year, its price will be 10 times what it is now. It will skyrocket without mercy. Once in a lifetime gamble with the guild's very future on the line, they succeeded in creating a one-of-a-kind elixir that shook the entire empire, the drink of the gods. People called it arrogant blasphemy to drag the god's name into that of a mere drug. They were even threatened with charges of sacrilege. But once its effects became known, everyone changed their tune and rushed to praise it. For over 1,000 years, a single truth had never been denied. A warrior's level is decided at birth. No one can break past that limit. One's innate gifts are fate itself, and constitution can never be changed. No matter how much effort one puts in, they can never surpass the limits they were born with. The one thing that shattered that common sense to pieces was the drink of the gods. Just by drinking it, even someone with no talent could become a capable swordsman. Jake looks at the bottle in his hand, thinking that what he just made is a mass-produced imitation, far inferior to the original. But for getting this wreck of a body back on its feet, there is nothing better. Later, when chaos spread across the empire, the first thing to burn was the Alchemist Guild. The method for creating the nectar that overturned the balance of power was simply too dangerous to exist, and with that, the recipe vanished from the world. Yet even so, Jake managed to piece together fragments and recreate something close to it. This is the result of turning the power of nature into something humans can wield, mana. The process of spreading it throughout the body and drawing it back. The circulation process. Depending on how well that works, the quality and performance of the power one can draw out changes drastically. Right now, with the nectar's help, he has possibly widened the blocked pathways within his body. Even so, even if the channels are opened, there should be pain, resistance from the body whenever mana is taken in. Jake is shocked. Instead, it flows smoothly, as if settling into its rightful place. Even a newborn's body has impurities that block proper circulation, so don't tell him that this body belongs to one of those monsters people call a genius. In the evening, Han is standing outside the door when it suddenly opens, and Jake asks whether anything happened while he was inside. Han stares at him in disbelief and asks if he has any idea how long it has been since he went in. He suddenly starts crying, saying he was terrified that something might have happened to him. Han looks closely at Jake and notices something strange, stepping forward to examine him. Jake thinks that Han has been watching Lucian from closer than anyone else, so it is no surprise he can sense that something is different. On the outside, there are no major changes yet. Proper nutrition is still needed for that. What truly matters is the inside, and that is changing at an unbelievable speed. Lucian's natural constitution is what made this possible. This body's potential places him in the same category as the individuals who go on to change the world. Jake tells Han that he owes him for this opportunity. Rewards and punishments must always be clear. He orders Han to empty out everything he has and invest it. they will rise together straight into the skies. Han looks at him in shock, while Lucian lets out a wild, almost crazed laugh. 1 week later, in a peaceful forest, Han and Jake walk side by side. Jake thinks to himself that this feels like heaven, as if life could truly be this comfortable. Meals arrive on time. His room is cleaned spotless without him lifting a finger. They even prepare his bed for him. In the past, going hungry was his daily routine, but thanks to this life, he has been able to focus entirely on his recovery. Something has been nagging at him for several days now, the existence of Jake himself. He checked the current captain of the guard, but no one resembled him. Even the shift he used to work is now handled by someone he has never seen before. He decides that this is probably for the best. Han suddenly calls out, asking if he is really planning to go in there. Jake asks what he means, and Han reminds him that he always said he hated even setting foot near the training grounds. Jake asks if he did. Han says that ever since the second young master scolded him during training, he swore he would never come back. Jake thinks that, judging from Han's reaction, it is easy enough to imagine what happened. For a child of the Duke's house, swordsmanship is a basic requirement. For the second son, this must have looked like a golden opportunity. Under the excuse of sword training, he could plant pure terror into Lucian and make sure he would never take another step onto the training grounds. Jake tells Han not to worry. That all belongs to the past. All Han needs to do now is trust him and follow. Elsewhere, a man asks a servant if it's true that the third young master came here of his own will. The servant confirms it, saying he is currently walking around the training grounds with his personal attendant. The man narrows his eyes, thinking there's no way Lucian has forgotten what happened that day. He orders the servant to report this immediately. He will make sure the meal is nicely prepared before he arrives. Meanwhile, Jake looks around the training grounds and thinks this far exceeds his expectations in the best possible way. There are countless weapons he can freely use, and he does not even need to worry about breaking them. The space is wide enough for serious movement, and this entire facility belongs to a single private household. Just as he is thinking that, a man named Hendrik arrives, saying his eyes were not playing tricks on him. It really is the third young master. He admits he was so surprised he did not want to believe it. The memory of Lucian turning tail and running the moment Geordi taught him is still vivid. Like a lamb being chased by a wolf. Jake looks at him as Hendrik continues, saying that even now, Lucian still seems afraid of this place bringing a servant into a sacred training ground meant only for warriors. Hendrik greets him, saying it has been a while. He adds that a year ago he personally helped guide Lucian's form together with the second young master. It was truly an enjoyable time, if he says so himself. Jake glares at him and then grins, thinking this is getting interesting. Knights, the embodiment of honor and loyalty. Usually born into noble families, they are trained strictly in martial arts and etiquette from childhood. Only after earning merit on battlefields and through missions do they finally receive a knighthood from their lord, completing their status as knights. In the end, however, they are nothing more than expensive hunting dogs wearing fancy collars. That is why they are always so polite toward the lords and bloodlines that grant them wealth and honor. With that kind of arrogant attitude, Lucian's poor standing certainly plays a part, but more than that, it's because they have backing behind them and feel untouchable. Jake looks at Hendrik with that thought in mind. He knows he cannot subject them to harsh, reckless training. Like it or not, knights are the core fighting force and valuable assets of the house. Any punishment that skips proper procedure would only create unnecessary tension between lord and vassal. Jake says that avoiding the training grounds forever just because of something that happened in the past would be pathetic. From now on, he plans to come here often and learn sword forms. As he said, an entire year has already been wasted, so there's no time left to spare. Hearing this, Hendrik bursts into laughter, saying he really likes Lucian's jokes. It is already far too late for him to learn sword forms. Hendrik explains that sword forms are secret techniques, legacies left behind by their ancestors. Simply following their movements grants insight and refines the body. That is ancient wisdom at its finest. But all of that only matters if the mana pathways in one's body are open to begin with. After the age of 16, those pathways close, turning sword forms into nothing more than physical exercise, nothing more, nothing less. Sword forms without enlightenment are completely useless. In fact, Hendrik adds mockingly, now that he thinks about it, that might suit Lucian quite well. Why not become the Empire's greatest dancer while he is at it? That would save time and help him discover what he is truly suited for. If not, he could always spend his days tending the garden. After finishing his mockery, Hendrik glares at him, fully convinced that the claim about mana paths closing at 16 is a lie, something anyone could expose with a little investigation. But it doesn't matter. If it ever comes up, he can always downplay it and smooth things over. The real goal has already been achieved. A fool crushed by his own ignorance. Unable to argue back. A pathetic worm, terrified and frozen in place while being mocked by a mere retainer. Then Jake speaks. He says that from what he has heard, the path of mana does not close at 16 but at 25, so there's no issue with him learning now. Hendrik asks if he is really sure about that. Jake replies calmly that Hendrik must be mistaken because his brother does not think that way. Suddenly, Jake raises his voice, causing a ruckus. He says this is the most basic of basics, something even a stray mutt on the street would know, yet Hendrik is still confused about it. At his age, does that even make sense? How many talented individuals have had their future stolen because of such wrong knowledge? It is enough to bring tears to his eyes, to think that his brother turned out to have an empty skull. Hendrik asks what in the world he is talking about. Jake tells him not to interrupt. If what Hendrik said is true, then this is a disgrace to the house and a clear crisis. He says Hendrik would never try to deceive the Lord's own son, so he does not believe that is the case. Hearing this, Hendrik panics and asks what he means. He insists he would never do such a thing. Jake replies that this entire situation is unbelievable, pure nonsense. There is no way a knight of House Valdek would stoop to something so petty. Hendrik hurriedly agrees. Of course not. Jake nods and says exactly. That's what he thought. In that case, this is not something they can simply laugh off. Carelessly wagging their tongues, like this shows they have no idea how serious the matter truly is. Hendrik asks what he means. Jake answers that if the goal had merely been to embarrass him, he would have let it slide. It is natural that he and the others think little of him after he neglected his duties and wasted his time. He cannot blame them for that. But that is a separate issue. If knights like Hendrik and his brother, the very pillars of this arch house, are blocking talented individuals by spreading false information, then that is something he can never overlook. It will create cracks in the strength of the knightly order, and those cracks could one day become a grave threat to the safety of their people. Hendrik gets stunned by the sudden shift. Jake tells him he should prepare himself, because he intends to report this to his father and ask him to tighten discipline from within. Hendrik gets shaken. Lucian used to tremble just hearing the Archduke's name. So why is he escalating things now? Was he always like this? He used to be as weak as a newborn lamb, but now it feels as if he is standing before a wolf. Just then, Geordie arrives, demanding to know what all the noise is about. Hendrik's eyes light up, thinking his timing could not be better. They were just talking about him. Geordie glares at Jake and says it's him again while Jake smirks. Seeing him, Hendrik rushes forward, saying he will explain everything. Just as he is about to speak, Geordie stops him, saying there is no need to explain. He says he saw Hendrik's disgrace with his own eyes. Hendrik freezes as Geordie continues, saying this is beyond disappointing. He orders him to fix his expression unless he plans on putting him in an even more awkward position. Geordie then walks toward Jake. Han grabs Jake's arm, bursting into tears and asking what they are going to do. Geordie's face is twisted with fury. Jake, however, grins, thinking that expression really is something. Even back when he worked as a guard, Geordie was infamous for his temper, the very picture of a noble among nobles. Since his faction was weaker than the eldest, he brought in many people from the outside, but most of them did not meet a good end. If he judged someone useless, he would pin a crime on them and quietly cut them off. Jake greets him with a bright smile. Geordie stares at him coldly and says he really is slow-witted. Jake asks what he means by that. Geordie replies that he heard everything between him and Hendrik. He grins and says Jake behaved in a way that disgraced House Valdek's dignity. Jake asks how. Geordie explains that while Hendrik may have made a mistake, he clearly used Geordie's name to stir confusion. However, he has no intention of reprimanding him. Hendrik has shed too much blood for the house, unlike Jake. Geordie's tone sharpens as he glares at him, saying that Jake could not even withstand basic sword training and ran away, yet now he thinks he has the right to blame others. Geordie tells Jake to respect the knights because it is thanks to them that House Valdek exists at all. He then apologizes to those present, saying he will personally keep an eye on his foolish younger brother. Jake thinks that is how he wants to play it. His mind works better than Jake expected. He insulted him, yet smoothly twisted the situation, insulting the knights, riling them up and saving his own face all at once. Jake scoffs and says that as expected of him, even if there was a misunderstanding between Hendrik and himself, it would only be right for Geordie to scold him. Yet instead, he has given him such precious guidance. To think Jake once called him a helmet stand and a fool, he's now ashamed of having spoken badly of him. Geordie's face darkens with anger as Jake continues, deliberately mocking him. In exchange, Jake thinks he will use Geordie to erase Lucian's weak image and carve a new, unshakable impression into everyone's mind. The old third young master no longer exists. After speaking his piece, Jake says he will now take his leave. Geordie steps in front of him, blocking his path, asking if he thinks he can just walk away like this. Jake looks back at him and calmly asks if he has forgotten that their father has been watching him closely these days. Geordie hesitates. Jake adds that he has nothing to lose, but Geordie does. Jake then turns and leaves, taking Han with him. As they depart, Hendrik asks Geordie if he is really going to let him walk away like this. Geordie answers only with a chilling stare. On the way back, Han asks Jake if he is really sure this is okay. He knows what Geordie is like. There's no way he will let this go. Han begins to cry. Jake tells him to calm down, thinking that this is a feeling only those who have experienced it can truly understand. When a useless superior makes a mess and then washes their hands of it, nothing is more infuriating. Jake tells Han it will not happen. A mere knight will not pull something like that, and even if they try, he will not allow it. He helps Han to his feet and says that when a master acts like an idiot, it is always those beneath him who get crushed. Jake thanks Han sincerely and promises him that from now on, because of his own foolish actions, he will never let his people be looked down upon or forced to live in fear. He tells him they will do well together from here on out.